Why does a 10-year-old girl's dead father turn out to be the most powerful and morally questionable sorcerer who ever lived? And why did he engineer his own children to surpass him? Why did 4 women in Japan quietly build a multiverse bigger, messier, and more emotionally devastating than anything Marvel has ever put on a cinema screen? And why does almost nobody in the West talk about it? Hello, hi, I'm Ubi Manga. This is my very first YouTube video. If you found me from my Cardcaptor Sakura posts on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube Shorts, hi, hello, how are you? You are the reason this exists. And also my apologies for taking a lifetime to create this video. I just wanted to make sure that I got all my information down right, and because this multiverse might get sort of complicated, especially with Tsubasa. Plus I was moving, so I had to delay this video, but we're here now. If you have no idea who I am, also, welcome. I make anime and manga lifestyle deep dives across my social platforms and apparently now on YouTube too. This is where I will go deeper in diving. Just letting you all know, I am a one-person team. I have no additional researchers, no editors, no fact-checking department over here. It's just me, my notes, my time, my energy, and yeah, basically it's just all me. So if I got something wrong, and I might, you can let me know politely. I will take it seriously and add it to my additional notes, which will be linked in the description so that you all know where I got all my sources from. Some of them might be theories that I probably made up. We can all add in our own little spin and theories in the comments. Also, warning, there will be spoilers. So if you're not into with the Clamp multiverse, then I don't know, you can leave if you don't want to be spoiled, but other than that, you want to listen to something a little different, like an anime breakdown, then leave this video on. Now for today's sponsor, it's you! I'm on Coffee. The link is also in the description where, you can tip me in ube lattes, which is exactly what it sounds like, but also it goes directly into more of this sort of content as well. You can drop in occasionally or become a monthly ube. That's where I'll share updates, announcements, some exclusive things as this ube manga community grows. You'll obviously be the first one to know because you'll probably be the only ones there, but still, if not, that's perfectly fine because I'm not James Charles. But if this kind of content is your thing and you want to see more of the anime commentary community, you can hit subscribe and like and comment on this video as well. My goal is to hit 10k subs here, and I'll be grateful for every single one of you. Liking this video helps me and it helps the algorithm know that you want to see more of this type of thing. And if you don't, you can leave a black heart if you hate my guts. But anyways, back to the Clamp content. I want you to look at this. You don't need to try to understand it now. That's where I come in and explain the whole video. Every connection on this map is a canon in universe relationship. Some of these series are light comedies, some are apocalyptic horror, some ran in completely different magazines targeting completely different audiences, and one of them has been on hiatus since 2003. This is what 4 women quietly built over 35 years while most of the Western world was looking elsewhere. Let me remind you, this is not a ranking, it's not a debate. This is more like a celebration, a deep dive, and honestly, a love letter. A love letter to Clamp. Today, we're covering the Clamp multiverse, who they are, what they built, how it connects, and why in 2026, it still matters. If you watched Cardcaptor Sakura as a kid and moved on, there is an entire universe waiting for you. And if you've been a Clamp fan for years, if you've already cried over Tsubasa, if you already know what the price of a wish costs, this one's for you too. So let's start at the beginning. Who is Clamp? Before we could talk about the multiverse, we have to talk about the 4 women who built it. And I want to be very clear about something up front. When I say 4 women, I mean 4 women who, between 1989 and right now, have sold nearly 100 million books worldwide. 4 women who wrote simultaneously shoujo manga, shonen manga, seinen manga, and everything in between. 4 women who, any reasonable measure, are one of the most commercially, successfully, and critically respected creative teams in the history of manga. And they did all of it with no assistance. Another fun fact, and I know that the die-hard Clamp fans already know, Clamp started as a group of about 11 women writing doujinshis, which is basically fan fiction, but yao fan fiction. And here are a few of them. In an industry where most manga artists run entire studios full of assistants and support staff, Clamp have always refused. They've stated outright that assistants would slow them down because after decades of working together, they built up years of lore that no one else could possibly understand. And I feel like you just can't hire someone into that. And most casual anime fans probably don't know each Clamp member by name. Clamp is a woman-led Japanese manga collective currently consisting of 4 members. Nanase Okawa, the writer and story director. Every plot, every script, every piece of dialogue flows through her. She is, in every practical sense, the architect. Mokona, the lead artist and character designer. Every face you fall in love with in the Clamp series was probably drawn by her. She grew up in Kyoto, near temples and shrines, and if you ever wonder why Clamp's mythological work feels sincere, that's probably inspired by her upbringing. And Sabaki Nikoi and Setsuki Igarashi, primarily responsible for action sequences, layout, textures, backgrounds, and secondary characters. Worth noting, these roles shuffle between each member. The three artists might take the lead on different aspects. The team functions less like a traditional studio and more like a four-person creative organism that has been running so long it barely needs to communicate each other. They just understand each other, which again explains why no assistants could ever keep up. In 1989, Clamp submitted an original concept manga magazine, Wings, drawing inspiration from ancient Hindu and Vedic texts. The editors read it and approved it, which launched Clamp's official first series, RG Veda. However, this was not a safe first series. RG Veda is a 10-volume fantasy about gods, prophecy, and an apocalypse. It has a protagonist of no defined gender. It's dense, it's tragic, and it's absolutely beautiful. In a 2005 interview published in the Clamp no Kiseki art book, Okawa described how RG Veda came to be. When we were doing doujinshi, we talked about creating an original story, and that's when we came up with the basics. We did a kind of digest book which presented the characters and the concept of that world. The editors got a hold of it and invited us to do a professional publication. So the first professional Clamp series was an original story they'd already been developing in doujinshi form. They walked in with a complete creative vision and a magazine took a chance on it. The series ran for 10 volumes and was successful enough to give Clamp a career. After that, they just kept going. You got Tokyo Babylon, Magic Knight Rayearth, X, 1999, Cardcaptor Sakura, one after the other in the 90s. In less than a decade, they went from self-published fan fiction to one of the most prolific creative teams in Japanese publishing history, and they never stopped. Here's a part I want to linger on for a quick second, because I think it's genuinely underappreciated. Clamp writes in every genre. You got magical girl, dark supernatural thriller, apocalyptic shoujo, mecha fantasy, sci-fi romance, even supernatural slice of life, sports manga. In a 2004 interview in Puff magazine, when asked about working simultaneously on two wildly different series at the same time, Okawa said, while calculating both story strands, depicting them is fun. She said fun. While serializing two weekly mangas simultaneously for two different publishers, two different tones, two entirely different readerships. Now the question worth asking, why does any of this matter for the multiverse? Because the genre range isn't random, it's structural. The reason the Clamp multiverse works, the reason a story about a magical little girl can be connected to a story about the apocalypse, which is connected to a story about a ghost seeing high schooler, which is also connected to a story about sentient computers, is because Clamp never treated genre as a box to stay inside. They treated genre as a lens. And when you apply the right lens to any subject, you can connect it to anything else. The multiverse is partly what holds all these tonal swings together into one body of work. But before we get to how the connections work, I want to give you one more thing about Clamp as people. In that same 2004 Puff interview, Okawa was asked about what keeps four people working together for 15 years. At the time, it was 15 years. And she said something that I think explains a lot about why Clamp's work feels the way it does. I've come to understand that there are landmines that we really can't talk about. We presumed on one another, we fought, and we were in danger of breaking up a few times. They almost broke up several times, and then they just kept going. That's honestly relatable in a way how close friendships work. Every Clamp series you've ever loved exists because four people from Osaka and Kyoto figured out how to keep working together despite these type of landmines. And I think that's worth knowing. So you know who Clamp is. Now let's talk about the one series that changed everything. The one that started it all for most of us, and which it turns out was never the beginning, Cardcaptor Sakura. I need you to set aside whatever version of the show you remember, because there's a real chance the version you watched as a kid was edited significantly. If you grew up watching Cardcaptors on Kids WB or Cartoon Network for Americans, and for Canadians, Teletoon, you saw maybe 39 of the 70 episodes. Probably reordered with same-sex relationships removed, character names changed, and the entire emotional arc refocused around action because the executives apparently decided girls couldn't lead anime. The show I'm about to describe is not that show. The show I'm about to describe is one of the most emotionally sophisticated, thematically rich, and deliberately constructed magical girl series ever made. 10-year-old Sakura Kinomoto accidentally opens a mysterious book in her father's library and releases 52 magical cards called the Clo cards into the world. Kero, the guardian beast of the seal, currently in his small, fluffy, exhausted his power form, tells her she's now responsible for capturing them all before they cause damage in the real world. She gets a magic wand, she gets a costume made by her best friend, she gets a best friend with a camera, and then the show does something really interesting. Each card is a spirit, a living magical entity with a distinct personality and power. The windy, the fly, the shadow, the time, they are not objects, they choose their master, and the entire first arc of Cardcaptor Sakura is fundamentally about Sakura learning to earn that relationship, not just to capture the cards, but to understand them well enough that they willingly become hers. In the second arc, Sakura has to transform the Clo cards into Sakura cards. She has to rewrite them with her own magical signature. Not Clo Reed's power, not Kyo's guidance, not anyone else's help, but hers. Every card she's earned through the first arc has to be consciously chosen again using her own developing power. It's a coming of age metaphor that is simultaneously a clever piece of magical system design. And then there's the reveal underneath all of this. The person who designed this entire system, who created the cards, who set up the guardians and the rules and the tests. Clo Reed did it all specifically so that whoever inherited the cards would eventually surpass him. The magic system is not just a plot device, it is structurally an act of love from a dead man to a child he would never meet. Well, we'll come back to Clo Reed. Sakura Kinomoto is one of Clamp's purest creative expressions, and I think she's underestimated precisely because she's so earnest. She's not a complicated protagonist in the traditional sense. She doesn't have a dark side. She doesn't have hidden trauma. She doesn't really struggle with doubt the way many magical girl protagonists do. She's just a happy-go-lucky type of girly. What she has is simpler, in some ways harder to write convincingly. Every card she captures, she tries to understand first. Every person who challenges her, she looks for the reason behind the conflict. Every relationship in her life, like her brother, her best friend, her rival, her guardians, she approaches with the same fundamental openness, even when it's hard. In a way, Clamp created a thesis in this series, and it's basically this. Love is not a feeling you have, it's an action you take repeatedly, in small ways, and I think that's beautiful. Love is most real in the ordinary, and that the person who chooses kindness consistently is the person who becomes powerful enough to rewrite reality. And it becomes the thesis of the entire multiverse, because every darker series that follows is Clamp testing that same belief under increasingly brutal conditions. Can love survive the apocalypse? Can it survive memory loss? Can it survive a closed time loop that erases your very existence? Now let's talk about Tomoyo, because she deserves her own moment. Tomoyo is Sakura's best friend, the heiress to a major electronics company, and possibly the most emotionally aware person in the series. She is also Clamp's most self-aware character because Tomoyo's entire function in the story is to document Sakura. She films every card capture, she designs and sews every one of Sakura's battle outfits, and there are many, each one elaborate, each one gorgeous, each one has a function and purpose to every battle. She is the in-universe archivist of Sakura's story. For those of you who make fashion content, archive content, or any kind of documentation of beautiful things, Tomoyo is your patron saint. The person who says, I will make sure this is recorded. I will make sure it is remembered. And her iconic looks are definitely remembered. This is where I have to be honest with you, because Cardcaptor Sakura does something extraordinary and something you need to know going in, and both things are true at the same time. The extraordinary thing first. Cardcaptor Sakura released in 1996 in a children's manga magazine. It features a canonically queer couple, Toya, Sakura's older brother, and Yukito, his best friend. Yukito explicitly states that Toya is his special person. Toya gives up his entire magical ability, the supernatural gift he has carried his whole life, to save Yukito's existence. They are each other's person across every dimension, every alternate world, every version of themselves. Clamp calls these soul pairs two people who always find each other no matter what universe they're in. Even if they're not officially, stated as a couple, it's kind of obvious. And Tomoyo, no matter what people try to deny or say about Tomoyo, she definitely has romantic feelings for Sakura. And Shorin, the rival turned love interest, spends a significant portion of the series believing he has a crush on Yukito. It's eventually explained as a magical attraction rather than romantic feeling. But Clamp never makes it shameful. Bisexuality is presented as simply part of the world. In a mainstream children's manga in 1996. That's 30 years ago. That's the year I was born. In North America, Nelvana dubbed all of this out. Toya and Yukito became best friends. The scene where Yukito confirms his feelings was rewritten. Same-sex attraction was edited into something more digestible for a North American audience in 2000. You see that in other series like Sailor Moon, for example, that so many of us still grew up knowing on some level that there was something different and meaningful about these characters. The part I said I'll be honest about. Cardcaptor Sakura also contains several teacher-student romantic relationships, and I want to name them without glossing over them because they're there and they're uncomfortable, even accounting for the era and the cultural context. Sakura's father, Fujitaka, was 25 and a student teacher when he fell in love with Sakura's mother, who was 16 and still his student. Nadeshiko's family was against the relationship, as they should, and she was estranged from them because of it. Toya, as a middle schooler, was in a relationship with Kaho Mizuki, who was his teacher at the time. And in the manga specifically, not the anime which removed it, there is a subplot involving Rika, one of Sakura's classmates, and her teacher, Terada, which is presented romantically and is the most straightforwardly uncomfortable element of the series. I'm not going to pretend these aren't there, and I'm not going to retroactively excuse them as a product of their time in a way that dismisses valid discomfort. Late 90s shoujo manga had a particular relationship with age gaps that doesn't map cleanly onto contemporary ethics, and Cardcaptor Sakura is not exempt from that. What I will say, these elements exist alongside one of the most progressive depictions of sexuality, love, and human connection in its era, and the series is large enough to hold both of those things and still look clearly at what it gets wrong. Now let's talk about Shorin Lee, because he matters more than Cardcaptor Sakura alone. Shorin is introduced as Sakura's rival. He arrives from Hong Kong, a descendant of Chloe Reed through his mother's side of the Lee clan, with the intention of collecting the Chloe cards himself as his birthright. He is 12 years old, deeply serious, and incredibly terrible at emotions. He is also secretly one of the most carefully constructed characters in the series. Clamp does something very deliberate with Shorin. He starts the series believing love is a competition, something you win by being more powerful or more deserving than someone else. Over the course of the story, watching Sakura, who approaches every card, every person, every challenge with openness, he slowly, painfully learns that it isn't. His confession to Sakura is one of the most earned romantic payoffs in a manga because of how long Clamp makes him earn it. Here's why this matters beyond Cardcaptor Sakura. Shaoran Lee is a descendant from Chloe Reed. The Lee clan inherits Chloe's magical bloodline. When Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle was designed, this series where the multiverse becomes fully visible, Clamp chose Shorin and Sakura as protagonists, specifically because their Cardcaptor Sakura counterparts had a happy ending. Now, they wanted to take those same two people and see what happened when their love was tested under conditions that made Cardcaptor Sakura look like a warm-up. Shorin doesn't just introduce Sakura to love, he introduces the reader to the idea that some people are cosmically bound to find each other. That love in the Clamp multiverse is not something that happens to you once. It's something that the universe keeps arranging, world after world, life after life, in an endless loop. It's a beautiful way to describe or to talk about how to love someone endlessly. We'll explore exactly how endless that loop is in a few sections. Everything that follows in the multiverse and every impossible price is a variation on that sort of belief. Cardcaptor Sakura is where they tell you what love is. Everything else is a proof of concept. We just spent a significant time on Cardcaptor Sakura. Let's go back a few years back, early in the 90s, before 1996. Before we can understand X1999, we have to understand Tokyo Babylon, because Tokyo Babylon is its origin story, its emotional setup. The premise: Subaru is 16 years old, and he is the 13th head of Japan's most powerful Onmyoji clan, a family of spiritual exorcists who have served the emperor for centuries. He lives in Tokyo with his twin sister Hakuto, who is bold and eccentric and designs beautiful outfits for both of them, kind of like Tomoyo. Like, there always has to be a fashion girly. And he lives with a man named Shishiro, a kindly veterinarian in his mid-20s who is seemingly hopelessly in love with Subaru. I say seemingly because here's what Tokyo Babylon actually is. It's a story about a boy who has never been allowed to look after himself, who's also very powerful, super responsible, burdened by duty that nobody has ever taught him. His own needs also matter. Falling in love with a man who is, in fact, an assassin. Shishiro is the Sakura Tsukamori, an Onmyoji who kills using the same magical arts the Sumeragi use to protect. The Sakura Tsukamori and the Sumeragi are mirror families, light and shadow, protector and predator, and Shishiro has made a bet with himself. He'll spend 1 year with Subaru, and if at the end of that year he feels anything for the boy, anything that distinguishes him from an object, he will spare his life. Shishiro loses an eye protecting Subaru during an attack, and Subaru, watching him bleed, realizes he's in love with him, and the year eventually ends. Shishiro declares himself the winner of the bet. He felt nothing. He breaks Subaru's arm. He tries to kill him. He stopped only because Subaru's grandmother intervenes. Hakuto, who knew all along that Shishiro was dangerous and chose to bring them together anyway because she believed he was the only person who might ever truly reach Subaru, asks Shishiro to kill her instead of her brother. And he does. The manga ends with an adult Subaru, cold and distant, still searching for Shishiro, still intending to make him keep his word, because Subaru, having survived a bet he didn't know he was in, has made one of his own. He will find Shishiro, and one of them will kill the other. Tokyo Babylon is one of the most devastating things Clamp has ever written, and if that premise didn't convince you enough to read it, I don't know what will. And it ends on a cliffhanger that demands a continuation. That continuation continues in 1999. 1999 premiered in Monthly Asuka magazine in May 1992, running alongside Tokyo Babylon for part of its run, and continued through to March 2003 when it went on a hiatus. As of today, it has never been finished, unfortunately. It's the year 1999. Kamui Shiro, a young Esper, returns to Tokyo after a 6-year absence. He's come back to protect the two people he loves most, his childhood friends, Tori and Fuma. What he finds is an apocalypse already in motion. Tokyo is the battleground of two groups of superhumans who will decide humanity's fate. The Dragons of Heaven protect the Kekai, spiritual barriers built into Tokyo's landmarks, including the Tokyo Tower, that hold the world together. As long as they stand, Judgment Day is postponed. The Dragons of Earth, where they want to destroy the Kekai, not out of evil, out of genuine philosophical position, which they believe humanity is a plague and the earth can only be saved if we are removed from it. They're not wrong about diagnosis. They're just willing to act on it in a way that Dragons of Heaven aren't, if that makes sense. Basically, Kamui has to choose a side, and the choice is a trap because whichever side he chooses, his other childhood friend will become his enemy. The story is named X because Kamui and Fuma form an X. two paths that can only meet once in the moment of final confrontation. Now, both Shishiro and Subaru are in this series. They're on opposite sides. Years have passed since Tokyo Babylon happened. Neither of them has resolved what happened between them. And the series picks up that unfinished emotional thread and does something extraordinary with it, which I won't spoil here, but the Subaru and Shishiro arc in X1999 is, for many readers, the emotional core of the entire series. This is the pipeline. Clamp ends Tokyo Babylon and immediately picks those characters back up. They're older, more broken, and more defined, and then doesn't let them go gently. Here's the key talking point I want you to hold on to. Clamp writes villains who are right. Shishiro is not wrong about the world. He has seen enough of humanity. In Tokyo Babylon, through the supernatural cases, Subaru works through the cruelty and loneliness and indifference people inflict on each other, that his conclusion is not irrational. He simply decided at some point not to care. He removed himself from the equation. X1999 is also Clamp's most ambitious philosophical project. The apocalypse in X is not simply an action spectacle, it's a genuine question. Does humanity deserve to survive? The dragons of Earth are wrong to destroy, but they're not wrong to ask. Clamp never lets the dragons of heaven simply win the moral argument. The series is structured so that you understand on some level why people would choose the Earth to survive over humanity's. It sold over 12 million copies before their hiatus. It has a 1996 film adaptation directed by Rintaro and a 24-episode anime TV series from 2001, both of which give it different endings, because the manga never reached one. And here's the thing about the hiatus. I want to be clear that it was not due to the magazine's choice to keep on hiatus, and it wasn't Clamp being lazy. In a 2004 interview published in Puff magazine, Okawa said directly that the planned ending was deemed unpublishable because of the real-world climate, especially during its time. There was the Great Hanshin earthquake, the Sakakibara murders, 9/11. All of them hit during X's serialization, a manga depicting mass death in Tokyo through earthquakes and urban destruction. This simply could not be responsibly published in the social climate of those years. Clamp chose to stop rather than compromise the ending they had planned. And I think it's still worth reading. Clamp is very clear that they want to finish it. They've just never found the right conditions to do so. Several years later, most fans have accepted that they probably won't. In that unfinished ending, those unanswered questions about Subaru and Shishiro and Kamui and the future of Tokyo in this aspect, in this timeline, in this universe, cast a long shadow over the multiverse. And I think in today's climate, I don't think they're going to be able to touch the series. You've seen Clamp in Joy, Cardcaptor Sakura. You've seen Clamp in Tragedy, Tokyo Babylon, and X1999. Now let's see what happens when they take that full range, the joy and the tragedy, and build an entire cosmological architecture out of it. You have 2 series, 2 magazines, and 1 story. In February 2003, Holic began serialization in Weekly Young magazine. 3 months later, in May 2003, Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle began serialization in Weekly Shonen magazine. Same publisher, different magazines, different tones, 1 story. That was a plan from the beginning. Clamp conceived these 2 series simultaneously and designed them to be read together, intertwined, volume by volume, trading off as the story required. It wasn't a crossover, it wasn't a tie-in, it was a single narrative told in 2 parallel streams, the way a river might split and reunite. And you need both channels to understand where the water goes. Let's do Holic first, because in the publishing timeline, it arrived first. Kimihiro Watanuki is a high school student who can see spirits, not in a cool supernatural hero way, more of a exhausting, constant, nobody else can see what I'm dealing with type of way. The spirits are drawn to him because of an enormous reserve of spiritual energy he carries. One day, seemingly by chance, he stumbles into a shop. The shop belongs to Yuko Ichihara. Yuko is described in the series as the space-time witch, who grants wishes, always for an equivalent price. She'll remove Watanuki's ability to see spirits. In exchange, he has to work for her, and so begins the series. You see Watanuki cooking, cleaning, running errands, and being sent on increasingly strange supernatural cases. While Yuko tells him over and over in various ways, nothing is coincidence. Everything is inevitable. In Japanese, this concept has a name, Hitsuzin. It's the philosophical operating system of the entire Clamp multiverse, and Yuko is its most fluent speaker. Every wish she receives, every price she names, every client she sends away transformed, all of it runs on Hitsuzin. The reason Watanuki ended up in her shop was not chance. The reason Shorin is about to walk through her door is not chance. Nothing that happens in these 2 series is chance. Now, Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle. In the Kingdom of Clo, a desert nation named for its deceased founder, Clo Reed, Princess Sakura and a young archaeologist named Shorin are childhood friends. On the day Sakura plans to confess her love, she follows Shorin to a newly excavated ruin. Something in the ruin activates. Sakura sprouts magical wings, and the wings shatter into feathers and scatter across dimensions, carrying with them every memory she has. Without them, Sakura will die. Shorin carries her to Yuko Ichihara, the same Yuko from Holic, who sits at the dimensional crossroads and receives all those who need impossible things done. She can send him across the multiverse to collect Sakura's feathers. But the price? Shorin must surrender his connection to Sakura. She will have her memories returned, one by one, but she will never remember him. Not who he is to her, not what they mean to each other, not the love that drove him here. He pays it anyway. That is what Cardcaptor Sakura's thesis looks like when Clamp turns the volume to maximum. The group that travels with Shorin is worth naming briefly. You got Kurogane, a ninja from feudal Japanese alternate world, sent away from his home by Princess Tomoyo. Yes, that Tomoyo, as punishment for his recklessness. Phi de Flowright is a magician who is fleeing something he'll never discuss, traveling because standing still is more dangerous for reasons he won't explain. He smiles constantly, and almost nothing he says about himself is true. And the White Makona, a small rabbit-like creature created by Yuko and Chloe Reed, based on the original Makona of Sephiroth from Magic Knight Rayearth, who can travel dimensions and acts as the group's communication link back to Yuko's shop. Before we go any further into the world hopping, I need to give you one rule, and this is the rule that makes all of it work. And without it, the crossovers will probably confuse you. Even for me, looking into these things, it confused me too. Almost every character you recognize in Tsubasa is not the same person you know from their original series. Same face, same name, sometimes same emotional core, but they're a completely different person living a different life in a different world. That's why it's called the multiverse. The only exceptions are Yuko, Watanuki, and the Makonas. They are literally the same beings crossing dimensions. Everyone else is what Clamp calls an alternate incarnation, the same soul echoed across parallel worlds. It makes every moment a discovery rather than a confusion. The group hops world, each one is an alternate version of a world from another Clamp series. Each contains characters you probably recognize in different roles, and each feather they collect is a piece of Sakura's memory, powerful enough to reshape the world it lands in. Here's what that actually looks like in practice, because 3 specific examples are worth more than a general description. Tomoyo appears twice in feudal Japan. She is Princess Tomoyo Tsukuyomi, a warrior Miko sorceress who maintains the spiritual barriers of the country. Same gentleness, same watchful love, but instead of filming Sakura in school battles, she is sending Kurogane away to become stronger before she'll let him come home. Then in Piffle World, a steampunk racing dimension, she appears again as Tomoyo Daidoji, head of the Piffle Princess Company, who organizes a racing tournament. She received word from the other Princess Tomoyo that Shorin's group needs the feather to be returned to Sakura. 2 Tomoyos, different worlds, both quietly engineering things so that Sakura is okay. She from Chobits also appears at the very beginning, before the journey even starts. Phi has created a magical construct called Chi to guard the sleeping king he's left behind in his homeworld. If you know Chobits, you see the face immediately. In the Tsubasa world, she isn't a Persicom, she is more of a magical guardian of Faye's making. And then there are the 2 Ashuras, this one specifically. In Celeste country, the sleeping king Faye has put under a magical spell is actually King Ashura. He is based on Ashura-O from RG Veda, the dead father god. Later in the story, the group visits Shura country, where there is a different Ashura, King Ashura of the Shura clan. Ashura is based on RG Veda's protagonist, Ashura, the child, not the father. This Ashura was in love with King Yasha and wished to resurrect him. They die when the moon castle cannot grant the possible wish. 2 separate Ashura characters, same source material, different worlds, both tragic, both echoing RG Veda's themes, impossible love, a violent nature that can't be escaped, but telling entirely different stories with them. That is Clamp doing the same thing twice in the same manga, in different worlds, as if to prove the point. Certain souls keep finding themselves in the same situations, no matter what dimension they are in. About halfway through the series, a second Shorin appears. Has eye patch, the same face, different energy entirely. The Shorin the audience has been following, the protagonist of the first 14 volumes, is a clone, a magical duplicate created by the villain Fei Wong Reed to collect Sakura's feathers as part of a larger plan. The original Shorin has been imprisoned in a sealed tank this entire time. Here's the thing though, Clamp does that no summary can fully prepare you for. They give you no indication of this for 14 volumes. You've bonded with this person. You've watched him pay an enormous price out of love. You've traveled across the multiverse with him. And then the ground shifts. And you realize the person you've been following has always been a copy. The clone loses his heart in the confrontation that follows. Literally, the seat of his emotion, his care, his love for Sakura is consumed. What remains is a puppet. And then the second twist lands. Sakura is also a clone. The original Sakura's memories were used to create the feathered journey. The real Sakura has been somewhere else entirely waiting, while her clone has been living her life. Now here's where the Cardcaptor Sakura connection becomes something you physically feel. The real Shorin, the original, the imprisoned one, had met the real Sakura years before the story starts. She was only 7 years old and already cursed to die by Fei Wong. He tried for years to break the curse and failed. He made a wish to reverse time to save her, and the price was his freedom. He eventually became Fei Wong's prisoner. The clones were made from him and Sakura to play out the feather hunt on Fei Wong's behalf. This was all a game to him. When the timeline is finally repaired, Yuko reincarnates the 2 clones in the past. They grow up, they find each other, and they fall in love. For real, as their own people, and they become the parents of the real Shorin. To send him to Clover country, his mother pays with the only thing she has, her star staff. Cardcaptor Sakura's iconic wand, the symbol of her entire magical journey, appears in Tsubasa as a price paid to send the next generation toward their destiny. The time loop has no beginning and no end. Shorin exists because his parents loved each other. His parents because of a wish he made, and the wish was made to save Sakura. Sakura was endangered by a villain created as a side effect of Chloe Reed's wish to save Yuko. Everything connects. Everything was always going to happen exactly this way. Hitsuzen. What Clamp does with all of this, structurally, emotionally, philosophically, is the most technically ambitious thing in the series. The two clones are not lesser versions of the CCS characters. They are their own people. They're their own person. They go through their own devastation. Their love is entirely real, and they become the foundation on which the whole story was built. Here's where Holic becomes essential. While all of this was happening in Tsubasa, Watanuki and Holic was having his own story. One that seemed self-contained, episodic, slower paced, but Watanuki's headaches, his strange dreams, his moments of inexplicable connection to events across the world, these aren't random. They're because Watanuki is cosmically entangled with Shorin. Watanuki was created to fill the void left by Shorin's sacrifice. The gap, his absence left in the timeline's relationships and connections. Watanuki is, in a deeply specific sense, the shadow of Shorin, another him. And both of them are orbiting the same event, a wish made to reverse time, and the price that wish extracted from the universe. This is what Holic's "nothing is coincidence, everything is inevitable" means. The philosophy Yuko teaches Watanuki through magical errands is not abstract wisdom, it's the operating logic of the multiverse they live in. The reason Watanuki is standing in Yuko's shop asking to be freed from spirits is ultimately a consequence of a boy in a desert kingdom making a decision about someone he loves. Shorin searches the dimensions, Watanuki waits at their crossroads. Same love, opposite directions. Love does cost everything sometimes, and people pay for it anyway. And that, more than any plot mechanic, is why these two series are inseparable. So my lighting died. My phone's about to die and it's getting darker, so I got no natural light going on. But you know what? We move. We continue on. We thrive. Anyways, we've been deep in the central nervous system of the multiverse. You got Cardcaptor Sakura, Tokyo Babylon, X1999, Tsubasa, Holic. These are the series where the connections are explicit, structural, cosmologically significant, but the Clamp multiverse is bigger than its spine. And some of the most interesting things about Clamp as a creative team are visible in the series that sit slightly to the side of all that. The ones that share the same DNA without being tangled in the same plot. You have Magic Knight Rayearth ran in Nakayoshi, the same magazine as Cardcaptor Sakura, from November 1993 to April 1996, collected into 6 volumes. You have 3 girls in 8th grade, Hikari, Yumi, and Fu. They're on separate school field trips to Tokyo Tower when they're pulled through a portal into Sephiroth, a magical world where the strength of one's will shapes reality itself. They are fated, apparently, to become the Magic Knights, warriors who will rescue the imprisoned princess, whose unceasing prayers are the only thing holding Sephiroth together. It looks at first like a classic magical girl meets mecha fantasy adventure. The girls are charming, the world is beautiful, the stakes are clear, and then there's that classic Clamp twist. The girl reached the princess, they save her, she immediately attacks them with the intent to destroy them, because the princess summoned the Magic Knights not to rescue her, but to kill her. She had fallen in love with the supposed villain who imprisoned her, and that love had made her unable to pray solely for Sephiroth's well-being, which is the pillar's only purpose. Unable to step down and unable to continue, she engineered her own death, using girls from another world who would have no choice but to fight. The Magic Knights did not save the princess, they were always the weapon. Now that twist, delivered in a children's magazine to a young female readership, is Clamp saying heroism is more complicated than it looks. The girls go home knowing they killed someone who loved someone. The second arc of the manga is entirely about what you do with that knowledge. This is a series that established Clamp's willingness to subvert genre conventions they themselves appear to be following. A magical girl series where the mission was a lie, a rescue story where the person being rescued was the one who arranged the trap. It set a template for everything that came after. One more note, Makona, the creator of Sephiroth, revealed in volume 2 of the manga, the mysterious white creature who guided the Magic Knights, is the origin of the Makona that later appears in Tsubasa and Holic. After the events of Rayearth, the original Makona travels the dimensions and eventually meets Yuko and Chloe Reed, providing them with knowledge of alternate worlds. That one creature is the reason the multiverse travel mechanism in Tsubasa exists. My lighting is back. A 2026 anime remake is currently in production. The original is worth watching or reading before it releases. Chobits ran in Weekly Young magazine from 2000 to 2002, Clamp's first sign-in work, their first series explicitly for adult male readers. In near future Tokyo, humanoid personal computers called Persicoms are everywhere. College student Hideki Motosuwa, who can't afford one, finds an abandoned Persicom in the trash and brings her home. She can only say one word, Chi, and he names her that. As Hideki teaches Chi about the world, they both begin to wonder, can a Persicom genuinely fall in love? Can a relationship between a human and a machine be real, or is it always one-sided? Chi is eventually revealed to be one of the legendary Chobits, Persicoms rumored to have true free will and emotional consciousness. Her creator designed her to answer this question. Hideki, who fell in love with her, not knowing any of this, becomes the answer. The thematic parallel to CCS is not subtle, where Sakura's power comes from unconditional love. Chi's personhood is defined by love, her ability to feel it, to choose it, to be able to be made real by it. Chobits asks the question CCS assumes. What if love was not a given? What if you had to prove that it exists? Visually, Chi's design, the round eyes, the ethereal quality, the innocence, is clearly in dialogue with Sakura's. They're obviously not the same character, but they carry the same emotional register. Clamp is asking the same question with different materials. The same world connection, angelic layer, takes place in the same world as Chobits a few years earlier. The scientist who created the Persicoms first created battle dolls called Angels. He appears in both series. The technology pipeline is explicit in the manga, though notably the anime adaptations of both series quietly remove the connections. I want to close this section with two series that don't get talked about enough, Clover and Legal Drug. Both are unfinished, both are genuinely worth your time anyway. Clover ran in the magazine Ami from 1997 to 1999, 4 volumes, and then the magazine folded, and Clamp never returned to finish it. According to Okawa, 2 more volumes would be needed to complete the story. In a dystopian future, the government has discovered children with extraordinary powers called clovers. Classified by strength from 1 leaf to 4 leaf, Sue is the only 4-leaf clover ever found. She has been imprisoned her entire life because her power is too great to risk. Her only wish is to visit a place called Fairy Park. A soldier named Kazuhiko is assigned to take her. Sue has never had a relationship that wasn't defined by fear or control. The world has decided that the safest thing to do with her is contain her. And her only wish to see something ordinary and beautiful. Just once. For 4 volumes, it's an extraordinary piece of work. The fact that it stops mid-story is painful. What we have is beautiful. What we're missing would have mattered. Legal Drug ran from November 2000 to September 2003 and halted when its magazine folded and restarted in 2011 as Drug and Drop, which then also went on hiatus in 2013. Kazuhaya Kudo is found half dead in the snow by Riko and brought to work at a mysterious pharmacy. Their boss sends them on strange supernatural errands that make use of their abilities. Kazuhaya can read memories from objects. Riko has telekinetic-like powers. The series is much lighter. It's more comedic, more grounded, with warm, antagonistic chemistry between the 2 leads and carries the whole thing. What makes Legal Drug significant for this video is where it sits in the same world cluster. It exists the same contemporary Japan as Holic, Kobato, and Wish. Characters from Legal Drug appear in Holic. Watanuki visits the pharmacy. The same world cluster is not the multiverse, it's just a shared city, a shared Japan. Characters who happen to live in the same place at the same time. And if you want to understand how Clamp builds a sense of world, not just connected series, but a living, breathing, contemporary setting where supernatural things happen quietly, nobody really notices, Legal Drug is one of the best entry points. You have Rayearth, Chobits, Clover, Legal Drug. None of these series really connect to the multiverse the way Tsubasa does. Rayearth connects through Mokona, Chobits connects through Tsubasa's alternate worlds and the same world cluster with Kobato. Clover has its logo as a Tsubasa Easter egg. Legal Drug has its characters in Holic. But here's what matters more than the plot connections. Every single one of these series is asking the same questions. What does it mean to love someone who might not be able to love you back? What does isolation do to a person who was built for connection? What do you sacrifice, and is the sacrifice ever worth it? Clamp doesn't have a single theme, really. They have a single belief. They keep testing it in every genre, in every demographic, in every decade to see if it holds. And it always holds. So you've met the family, all of them. Now let's look at how they're all connected. Let's piece these pieces together. Actually, before we move on from cluster 1, there's one more series I want to name because it pulls together almost everything in the cluster into a single emotional string. Hanato is a cheerful, slightly clueless girl with a mysterious past she can't remember. Her task? To fill a magical bottle with healed hearts. The suffering she mends by helping people in order to grant a single wish, a wish she won't reveal. And by her side is a stuffed dog with a sharp tongue. This series is more gentle and episodic and full of warmth, and then it reveals what it actually is. Kobato is a quiet sequel to Wish. The character Kohaku, the angel from Wish who fell to earth and fell in love, appears in Kobato years later, living quietly in the same world with the human Shiichiro. The same celestial hierarchy, the same city, the same quietly extraordinary rules about what angels can and cannot want. And then there's the landlady of Kobato's apartment building, Chitose Miharo. Chitose, along with many other Chobits characters, appear in Kobato. She's the landlady of the main character's apartment complex with Chi and Freya, depicted as human twins, her daughters Chiho and Chise. This is Clamp doing something they do better than almost anyone, which is building a whole world out of characters you already love without announcing what they're doing. Kobato is not marketed as a Wish sequel. It doesn't announce its Chobits connections on the cover. You simply just notice by reading that you are in a place where you've been before, and that the people here remember things that happened in stories you thought were finished. The overarching mythology of Kobato is deeply intertwined with the angelic hierarchy established in Wish, and by the time the series ends, it has quietly stitched together Wish, Chobits, Holic, and Legal Drug into one lived-in world where everyone has a past and nothing was ever really separate. That's Cluster 1. Before I show you the map, I want to give you a framework, because without it, the map is just a bunch of lines, and with it, the whole thing suddenly makes sense. The Clamp multiverse is not one giant connected universe where every series exists in the same place. It's actually 4 separate clusters, and Tsubasa is a series that makes all of them visible at once. Cluster 1 is contemporary Japan. Cardcaptor Sakura, Clear Card, Holic, Wish, Kobato, Legal Drug. All of these take place in the same Japan, in the same city, with the same people wandering in and out of each other's stories. There's no dimension jumping required, but just a shared world. Cluster 2, it's near future tech Japan. You have Angelic Layer and Chobits. Just a few years apart, same city, same inventor. The technology that makes Battle Angels possible in Angelic Layer becomes the technology that makes Persicoms possible in Chobits. Same world, different eras. Cluster 3 is apocalyptic Tokyo. It starts with the Clamp campus, you know, a world of comedic school detectives, crazy superhero students. And then Tokyo Babylon picks up the same city, same supernatural element, goes dark with it. X999 takes everything Tokyo Babylon built and brings it to the end of the world. Cluster 4 is Tsubasa itself, which is technically its own separate multiverse containing alternate versions of all the other clusters as parallel worlds. Tsubasa doesn't connect to the other series by being set in the same universe. It connects to them by visiting alternate versions of those universes, while crossing over directly with Holic, which is why Holic exists in 2 clusters at once. That is the architecture. 4 clusters, 1 series that bridges all of them together. Now let's look at the full map. You've seen the dark and the light, the finished and the unfinished, the series that connected through plot and the ones that connect through belief. Now I want to show you something. At the beginning of the video I showed you this and told you not to worry about it yet. Now let's actually look at it. The center of the map is not Cardcaptor Sakura, even though CCS is the emotional center of the multiverse. The center of the map is actually a single character, Clo Reed. Clo Reed connects everything. He is the creator of the Clo cards in CCS. He's the deceased king of Clo country in Tsubasa, Princess Sakura's father, the man who built the kingdom the whole journey begins in. He's a person whose wish for Yuko Ichihara created the dimensional crossroads that makes Holic's shop possible. He created the 2 Mokonas with Yuko, modeled on the original Mokona from Magic Knight Rayearth, which is the reason dimension hopping exists at all in Tsubasa. After his death, he reincarnated into 2 people simultaneously. Ariel Hiragizara, who carries his power, and Fujitaka Kinomoto, who carries his warmth and is Sakura's father. The man who built the multiverse's logic is also quietly sitting at Sakura's breakfast table every morning. Every single major connection in the Clamp multiverse runs through was arranged by Clo Reed. Now let's trace the core triangle: CCS, Tsubasa, and Holic. CCS gives us Sakura, Shorin, and Clo Reed's legacy. Tsubasa takes alternate versions of Sakura and Shorin and sends them across every Clamp world. Holic takes the consequences of Shorin's sacrifice and follows a person created to fill that void. Yuko bridges Tsubasa and Holic where she sits at their exact intersection. The same shop that Watanuki stumbles into is the same shop Shorin brings an unconscious Sakura to. The same scene shown from 2 different angles in 2 different manga. That's not crossover. That is one story told in 2 bodies. Now the second connection that doesn't get talked about enough: Tokyo Babylon, X999. This one is not about alternate dimensions. It's not about the same face in a different world. Subaru Sumeragi in X is the same Subaru who was broken by Sashiro in Tokyo Babylon. Years later, on the opposite side of a war for humanity's survival, they are the same people in the same world carrying the same unresolved wound. When Tokyo Babylon ends, X999 picks up like the next chapter of a book. You have to put down mid-sentence. The Clamp school detectives characters appearing in X999 link the campus comedies into the same world, same Tokyo, same impending apocalypse. Then there are the cameos, the Easter eggs, the things that reward you for paying attention. Clamp making their own characters into references inside their own other series. The Piffle Princess logo appearing in CCS backgrounds, in Angelic Layer's technology shops, in Holic characters' wardrobes, and then expanding into an entire alternate world in Tsubasa with its own racing tournament and Tomoyo as the CEO. And here's the thing that I find interesting about all of this. Clamp never announced it. There was no sort of press conference, no franchise launch event, no Clamp cinematic universe branding. They just built it quietly over 30 plus years within the margins or the background details and the shared character designs and the plot threads that stretch between series, and they let fans find it. And it spread through fandom the way secrets spread. Someone noticed and they talk about on a forum thread. A theory was confirmed, whether by an interview, a fanship becomes canon, another connection was discovered and discussed online, and then there's me creating videos deep diving on these things. The realization that this was all probably intentional happened slowly and organically. That is a different experience from a franchise. A franchise tells you it's connected. A Clamp multiverse invites you to discover it all. The map exists because fans built it, and the map keeps growing because Clamp keeps adding to it. That's part of what makes it feel like a gift. I have to be honest with you about something. I spent this entire video celebrating Clamp, but a video about Clamp that doesn't address the unfinished stories, and I feel like you deserve the complete picture. So let's talk about it. xxXHolic is probably the most famous unfinished manga in the medium's history. 18 collected volumes, 5 uncollected chapters published separately, and then nothing. March 2003, the series went on a hiatus and hasn't returned. The story of why is complicated, and I covered it in section 4, but the short version is this. The content of xxXHolic: earthquakes destroying Tokyo, mass death. There was too many real-world tragedies so closely during its publication run that Clamp chose to stop rather than publish the ending they had planned. Each global disaster made the planned finale feel irresponsible to release. In 2006, Kadokawa published a special New Type magazine edition called Clamp New Type Platinum, which included an X18.5 supplement, a reprint of the 5 previously uncollected chapters that existed beyond the 18 volumes. In 2023, 20 years after the hiatus, Kadokawa released them as their own standalone, volume 18.5, as part of a premium collection edition. These releases say implicitly the story isn't forgotten, but they are not an ending. They are an acknowledgement for its existence. As of 2026, xxXHolic has been on hiatus for longer than it was ever in active publication. The series ran for 11 years. The hiatus has now lasted over 22. Most fans have made their peace with the possibility that it will never be finished. Some haven't. I understand both positions. Clover is a different kind of unfinished. xxXHolic stopped mid-story because of external circumstances. Clover stopped because the magazine it was published in, Ami, folded in 1999. The series had 4 volumes completed. According to Okawa herself, 2 more volumes would be needed to complete the full story. Clover is a series where the incompleteness becomes almost accidental. You can feel the weight of the missing chapters in the ones that exist. That doesn't make it less painful, but it makes it haunting in a very specific way that most unfinished stories aren't. Eagle Drug and Drop hiatus twice, as I mentioned. Gate 7 began in 2011, went on an indefinite hiatus in 2012, never returned. Holic Ray, multiple hiatuses since 2013, resumed in April 2025 after years of uncertainty. Clamp, by any honest accounting, leave a lot of things unfinished. That is a pattern, not a coincidence, and it's worth naming. I think there are a few things going on. One is simply the nature of manga publication. Magazines fold, schedules collapse, the industry changes. These are structural realities, not personal failures. 2 is that Clamp have, for 35 years, taken an enormous amount of work simultaneously. That is not an excuse, but it is context. And 3, this is the part where I find interesting. There is something almost philosophically consistent about it. Clamp's recurring theme is that not everything resolves. That fate is real, and sometimes it simply ends a story before the story is ready. The price of wanting something is that you might not get it. The unfinished works are not Clamp's thesis statement, but they're not entirely separate from it either. Here's where I land on all of this personally. I hold 2 feelings about Clamp's incomplete works at the same time, and I don't think I have to choose between them. 1, I wish they would finish xxXHolic. I think it deserves its ending. I think Subaru and Sashiro deserve their ending. I think the fans who have been waiting since 2003 deserve something. That frustration is real and it's valid, and I won't tell anyone not to feel it. 2, everything Clamp has finished, like Cardcaptor Sakura, Tsubasa, Holic, Chobits, Magic Knight Rayearth, Tokyo Babylon. It's amazing. It's iconic. It's on a pedestal. The frustration of what doesn't exist doesn't diminish what does. Damn, that's philosophical. The work that is complete is worth celebrating, and sometimes the gratitude of what exists is the more useful feeling to carry. Both things are true, and you're allowed to hold both feelings. You're allowed to be in your feelings. Let me tell you what I think is actually remarkable about Clamp. Not the sales figures, not the volume count, not the connected multiverse. What is remarkable is that they did it without a franchise machine. There's no studio mandate, no media company coordinating the crossovers, no phase 1 and phase 2 and strategic release calendar. It's just 4 women in a shared studio in Japan working without assistance, serializing in whatever magazine would have them, and over 35 years quietly building something that functions like the most coherent shared universe in fiction. The Marvel Cinematic Universe had a $500 million budget for its first phase, and an entire corporate infrastructure dedicated to keeping its continuity consistent. Clamp just had 4 girlies who couldn't always remember how to draw their own characters by the time they returned to the old series. They have said this in interviews. They occasionally had to look up their own designs. Obviously, they're human, they kept making mistakes, and yet the multiverse holds together. Not perfectly, nothing Clamp does is perfect, but it's meaningful, emotional. The connections land because they are rooted in feelings, not because they are policed by a continuity department. Most attempts at it fail, but Clamp managed it across 3 decades. Their influence on the medium is enormous and often uncredited. Cardcaptor Sakura is regularly cited as establishing the structure structure of what critics call the neoclassical magical girl. The framework of magical girl coming of age stories that centers emotional growth over battle escalation, that treats the protagonist's inner world as seriously as her outer challenges. The series influenced many other magical girl series like Pretty Cure, Sugar Chara, and the broader wave of magical girl anime that followed through the 2000s. Almost every episode of CCS featured a new costume. Clamp and Makona specifically created this as a deliberate statement. A girl should feel beautiful differently every time. Queer representation was ahead of its time. Toya and Ryukito are widely recognized as one of the earliest canonically same-sex couples in mainstream anime. Clamp wrote queer characters not as statement pieces or tragedy arcs, but as simply part of the world, as natural as any other relationship in the series. In 1996, in a children's magazine, and Tsubasa and Holic taken together functioned as a real-time argument that long-form manga storytelling could be architecturally designed, that you could build a narrative the way you build a building, with load-bearing structures and intentional depths and details that only make sense when you look at the full structure from the right distance. But here's the thing about Clamp that matters most to me. Cardcaptor Sakura specifically shaped how a generation understood love. Not romantic love as possession, not love as drama or obsession or conquest, love as something that makes you braver, love as something you choose repeatedly in small actions every day, in the laundry you do for someone, in the costume you sew so they feel beautiful, in the handkerchief you hand over without being asked. Sakura Kinomoto is not powerful because she was born with magic. She is powerful because she refuses to treat anyone, including her enemies, including the cards she has to capture, as less than worthy of care. Her power comes from her ethics. Her ethics are her magic, if that makes sense. That is a thing Clamp put into a children's magazine in 1996, and it has been quietly shaping people ever since. When I made my Clamp post on Instagram, TikTok, I wasn't expecting the comments from people saying they grew up with these stories, or that they were just discovering them now, or that they had no idea how many series connected. That reaction, that feeling of I didn't know the world was this big, is why I want to make this video, because the Clamp multiverse is one of the most ambitious, most human things a creative team has ever built, and it still doesn't get the conversation it really deserves. Clamp didn't just make anime and manga, they made a whole world, and then they kept expanding it until the whole thing felt like coming home. So that's basically the rundown of the Clamp multiverse. I feel like I ended up summing up like different series made by Clamp. I feel like I got sidetracked. I feel like I've been talking forever and I feel like I didn't really connect much. So if that makes sense. I don't know. I feel like I'm missing a bunch of pieces. Like, I'm only one person, so maybe I'll make a part 2 eventually. I hope I explained it well. It's 35 years, 100 million copies, four girlies just writing about love in apocalypse. No assistance, no franchise machine, just a shared studio and a belief about what love looks like. Tested, expanded, left unfinished, and more beautiful for all of it. If this video has convinced you of literally anything, I hope it's this. Go read the manga. Start with Cardcaptor Sakura, the original manga, or the 1998 anime, then Holic and Tsubasa side by side, volume by volume, the way Clamp intended them to be. Then maybe Tokyo Babylon before X and 999, then the Angelic Layer before Chobits, and if you want to go deep, Veda, Clover, Magic Knight Rayearth. The whole rabbit hole is there waiting for you. If you want the bite-sized version first, the short form deep dives, the character breakdowns, the Clamp content that doesn't require an hour commitment, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, where I've been doing a whole mini series on Clamp alongside this video. That's actually where this all started. So there's content there that complements what we covered. Links in the description, references that I've used to help me, tie down everything in this video. A Google Doc is linked in the description, as I mentioned earlier. And if you made it to the end of this video, I have a question for the comments. Which Clamp series hit you the hardest and why? It can be the one you grew up with. It can be the one that broke you the most. It can be the one you just discovered because of this video. Let me know below if you enjoyed this video, and I really hope you did. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. This is my first video, and every subscriber tells me there is a reason to keep making them. And going forward, I'm going to try to make weekly videos. And if you're a returning follower from Instagram or TikTok who made this video exist by leaving stars on the Clamp post, thank you so much. Seriously, this one is for you. I'm Ube Manga. I make anime and manga lifestyle deep dives, and the next one is going to be very fun. Thanks for watching.